And let me just go ahead and bring in House Republican Leader Tony McCombie. She is on the line right now, so let's continue this conversation, shall we? We were just hearing from State Representative Cam Buckner about this $1.5 billion transit bill passing in the House at about 2:30 this morning, 4 a.m. for the Senate. And we've been waiting to hear some Republican response to it as it was driven by Democrats. So, Representative McCombie, are you there?
I am. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for joining this conversation. I don't know if you were able to hear Representative Buckner as he was speaking there, but he did give you kudos for bipartisanship along the way, you and also Brad Stevens. He says he knows you're not happy about maybe some of the shifting in dollars that took place, but he also talked about the $1.50 delivery fee that did not happen in May. What's your response to this bill passing?
Oh, well, the bill definitely got better. And the first bill that came over from the Senate, he's right, the $1.50 delivery charge was a non-starter. And even the transit bill, I don't even know, is it a day ago or 2 days ago, with the various taxes on that was also a non-starter. So the bill that we actually had before us, although we had a delay on the language, by far was much better than the other two. But he's right. I am very concerned about the change through downstate.
Yeah. So that funding that was supposed to be about $200 million went down to $129, but he says that what they needed was like 80, so it would still be over what the need was. What's your take on that?
Well, if we're going to talk about the need for the transit for this year was about $230 million. So if that's the case, why are we passing a bill for $2.5 billion? Because that's the spend. Total. So that's really not a fair statement to say on need. The problem is there was a deal made between, and Leader Buckner was not part of that. With the gas tax, there was a bipartisan bill drafted that had 20 Republicans in support and helping craft that when the gas tax, there's a sales tax on our gas tax, a double tax. Republicans and many Democrats don't like that. The agreement was, well, if we can't get rid of that, then that needs to go back to roads and bridges and infrastructure, not transit, roads and bridges and infrastructure. And the downstate districts 2 through 9, compared to Chicago District 1, was going to get 55% of that cut. And, people don't mind paying taxes if they're going to get something for it. That goes down to zero. That was a deal made by Republicans and Democrats, and that deal is no longer on the table. It's voided, and that went down to zero. They're giving us basically 15% now and telling downstate that it has to be spent only on transit. So that is a big concern for anybody outside of District 1.
Yeah, one of the things that he mentioned was the fact that there's been so much talk about that road fund that he says really should be just a transportation fund, or termed just a transportation fund, and that maybe the initial outlook on what that fund was supposed to be used for has actually been maybe misrepresented in years past.
Well, I don't disagree. The road builders and the road labor was instrumental in getting that together as well, and just like they were on this one. But 20% of the new revenue in the original bill did go to transit. So to say that transit didn't get anything would be false. So there was a deal for transit in the capital bill that was passed several years ago. Now to shift it completely away from the road fund, and also too, they're counting on about $200 million from the interest alone. So now there's a motivation to keep the overall balance of the road fund high, so they can collect that $200 million on the interest, and we would like it to be spent. The state of Illinois shouldn't be holding taxpayer dollars and not spending them. The point of the gas tax and the sales tax on the gas tax is to fix our roads and bridges, put money into transit, of which it did, and now they're just reversing that.
Yeah, and then there's the the higher tolls. Where did the higher tolls come? If you're given a hierarchy of things that you thought no to, where did higher tolls kind of rank in the hierarchy?
Well, I think that's probably where the real fix was, to raise the RTA tax, sales tax in the RTA region for the 6 counties of which they did, and then to raise the toll. I think that was the initial plan, and that would have actually got them where they needed to on that revenue. So to take the sweeps and make those sweeps not just a one-time sweep, it's a forever sweep, is, I think, disingenuous, quite honestly. But the tolls, for me, when I have to go to the office to Naperville or Chicago, that's going to be a $10 round trip for me in addition. Not, let alone the folks that are using it on a commercial. That's a 30% increase. So 45 cents on every toll to go up. And, I think a lot of people don't realize how much the tolls are because we all have the automated. But they're going to start seeing that when they're going to have auto replenishing all of the time through the iPass. So I'm also untrusting of how that money will be spent. It states that the money generated from that toll increase will be used for transit capital on the toll. I'm leery, pretty untrusting, and I actually think it'll probably be used for operations, and that's not what it's made for. But time will only tell on that.
Yeah, there's much more to come on that. So I asked him, and I want to ask you the very same question. From your perspective, how did we get in this situation that needed this type of discussion and possibly some of these options here? How did we get to being so close on the fiscal cliff to going over?
Bad management. It's very simple, bad management. And I think that's another reason this governance piece is so important. So let's, the idea, especially all along, was, okay, let's get them to that, that 230 million. Let's get the new board in place and let's see what their ideas are. Let's see what they can do for efficiencies, for safety. To put an ambassador or a task force in place isn't really going to address the safety issues that a lot of people have. And those that are, homeless, that are on, our systems. I think we needed to, I know we needed to do a short-term fix for the revenue and let the new board work together, figure out what's wrong. And I do believe there still is some unbalance for the collar counties because, yeah, they do get representation, but Cook County and the mayor, certainly, and the governor are still going to have override over the collar counties. So that's going to be a real hard pill to swallow.
Is this similar, and I know I'm giving a far out, comparison, but still, just for the sake of this, is this similar to, say, the government shutdown, where one side of the aisle is saying, let's do something now, and another side of the aisle is saying, well, go ahead, open things up, and then we can talk. Are you saying, I asked him about the weight in this, and he's saying people who need this transportation fix needed it now, versus you saying, well, let's put the board there and then allow them, but more time passes then.
Yeah, I think to put $260 million into a kitty for them is substantial dollars. I understand what he's saying about the immediate. But $260 or $30 million would have solved that problem temporarily. And if it was so necessary to do right now, why was the amendment filed at the end of the evening in early morning hours to change the effective date to June of 2026? If this was immediate, they should have kept the effective date as immediate, and they did not do that.
Okay. There were other conversations, I know, in terms of what Republicans were asking for or thought needed to be done. What was that conversation like that you knew of or that you participated in?
Yeah, and I will give both Leader Buckner and Leader Avedina. They were transparent. They did work very well with Leader Stevens on my side, and certainly communicated with me. Um, I would say they're probably not completely happy with this bill either. And but to have government get involved on these issues, I mean, this is something that on the ground it needs to happen by the people on the ground and in that board. Overall, I believe they really tried to have good, transparent conversation. But that being said, it doesn't always, with rank and file especially, what comes down from the speaker, the president of the Senate, and the governor ultimately is how it goes. So overall, I'm glad they allowed the Leader Stevens to be involved, and I think he did add a lot of value and a lot of ideas. Is he 100% happy with this legislation? No, he's not. But I'm going to guess nobody really is.
What were some things that he specifically advocated for that did make it in and got support from Republicans? Because one of the things that Leader Buckner talked about was the fact that there were some issues that Republicans came to the table with that did end up in the final draft that still then didn't get a vote for.
Yeah, the RTA tax, to tax themselves for the transit, that was certainly something I believe would have been agreed upon as a user fee. I think to raise the user fees in Chicago would have been a better option rather than they're not allowing a rate increase on the user for a year. Which I think is really disingenuous because they haven't been raised in so many years already. So certainly the RTA, I think the toll, and those were things that were agreed upon. I don't know how the cut of the toll was, but I can tell you taking downstate out of the picture for roads and bridges, that was not part of the plan.
Yeah. What would you have suggested instead when he says, okay, prior to COVID funding, already funding wasn't working before COVID. Obviously, COVID made things much worse. Ridership went down, recovery dollars dried up, and he said that the system just went into disarray. What would have been your course of action?
Well, they need to look at efficiencies, and that certainly I don't think was addressed. I mean, you're going to see ridership still down. So are we looking at maybe, smaller buses, maybe less routes, and maybe not expanding rail right now until we build the ridership? So I think to look at, and that governance piece I think would have been and will be important as we go forward, and may have to evaluate on a state level how things work, but to really look at the efficiencies of that, I think is the important piece and probably a better. So do a short-term revenue fix, change the governance, look at efficiencies, and let's reevaluate. And even if we would have waited till the final hours at the end of May on May 31st, what would have been the difference with the effective date of June 1, and you would have had some time with that new board. Now we're not looking until June 1, and so it's just going to delay that problem.
Well, hopefully the conversation continues. I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
All right.